Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This is the last episode of season 13, and we're so thankful that you've been here all season long. At least we hope you've been here all season long. I guess we really won't know. Kyle, you got a story for us today? I don't know the story. I just see 3 key words, and I'm like, what the heck?
This story is about dog poop DNA. There are a few dogs at my condo complex.
And you're on a mission to figure out who's pooping on your porch.
Well, so check this out. I mean, I think
Wow.
there's like 300 units in this complex.
Okay.
There's a number of dogs, and obviously everyone is encouraged to clean up after their dog when they walk in.
Sure.
And people get annoyed if that doesn't happen.
Of course.
Our HOA registered for this program where when you have a dog, you have to register your dog. You have to give them a DNA sample. If there is dog poop discovered on the property, you're supposed to call it in, tell where it is. Then, so I'm pretty sure that, forgive me if this is not exactly how it works. My neighbors may correct me, but you locate it. Then someone from the office comes out and samples it, sends it off to this company, and they match it up by DNA with the samples that are in the record.
Wow.
That sounds like it's made up, but it actually worked one time. I know of one time that it actually worked. I know the person who found the poop. I actually don't know what happened in the case.
Like, is it a fine or a warning?
I think it's a fine, and I think they went all the way through with that case because they wanted to make
Prove
a point that, like,
sure.
If you leave your dog poop out, you're going to get fined. I mean, it makes
That's amazing.
sense,
I mean,
right?
sure. If it works, great. I'm all about
Yeah.
it, especially in a shared environment like that. I would be annoyed if I kept finding dog poop on my lawn or even out in the community areas.
Yeah,
Or
and
common.
for the most part, obviously, people are very responsible.
Sure.
I only know of this happening once.
I can't help but think, it's probably terrible, but I feel like I'm already thinking of 2 or 3 ways to work around it if I had a dog.
Okay.
The original sample, do you give that in front of some representative?
That's a good call. Like, you could pet your neighbor's dog and then just like, oh, some of their hair came off of my hand. I'm going to send that in.
If I lived there and I just brought home a puppy, I would bring home like a friend's puppy as well who doesn't live there.
Right.
So now we have 2 dogs just hanging out for the day. I'm going to supply the DNA sample that will never be there. So just in case my dog gets out and does his business and I'm not there and there's poop I don't even know about, it can't be traced back to me.
Oh, man.
Well,
It's got to be like...
What if I, lose my dog or give it away or, if something goes wrong and then I get a second dog, but I don't actually report that's a new dog. So people just think, depending on how it looks, it's another golden retriever Sean has. Like, how would you know? I don't know.
There are seemingly lots of holes in this plan.
I'm sure I'm not the first one to think of it. So maybe they do have a way of figuring it out. And I will say, although it seems a bit crazy, when you move in, you sign the paper saying you're going to play along. And if you don't, then why shouldn't there be consequences to
that? Could be a big scandal if somebody submits the wrong sample originally, right? And there's some investigate. Oh man, that would be
what if I would go to the neighbor I didn't like. I would find a sample of their dog, and I would just...
There's so many ways to misuse this protocol.
I think you should get a dog and see how things work.
All right. That does not...
You mentioned a couple episodes ago, you don't want a dog.
There's something about another being relying on me sustaining their life.
Yeah. We call that responsibility, and I understand there's something that you're adverse to when it comes to responsibility.
Clearly.
Well, Kyle, today I wanted to talk about something we've kind of hinted on throughout this season. In fact, I can think of episodes 263 and 265 specifically, where we talked about how things develop and change over time. So I thought it would be worth a conversation talking about things that we used to think were a big deal, but maybe they're not.
We all have those things, right? Like when we were younger, obviously a lot of things have changed in perspective. I just remember everything was a big deal. My thinking didn't go past like 2 weeks from now.
We talked a little bit about specifically disease and disability, how things have changed over the years and how that impacted our perspective on life, right? And how it caused us to think beyond 2 weeks. Well, I started thinking about, what about all the stupid stuff? When we were in high school or even younger, we were kids, it's the end of the world if you don't become an astronaut. It's the end of the world if you don't get an A on that test or whatever it may be. So let's reverse the role a little bit and think back to those kind of things in that perspective. What was so important to us at younger ages that now we look at and we just laugh at. First thing that came to mind for me, Kyle, when I started entertaining this topic were pet peeves. I have a couple friends, later high school years, early college age. I remember it was a big deal. We always talked about it because we were very close and we all knew each other's pet peeves. We were a group of 3. Anyway, 2 of mine, one of them was fingerprints on my car windows. Like, that drove me nuts and kind of angry. Like, if somebody purposefully did it, I'd be frustrated. Now I get it, a kid or you're walking by, you lean on, like, it happens, but it still annoyed me. But these friends, when they really wanted to get it under my skin, they would literally just put their hands up to the windows, and there was nothing funny about it to me, right? It was kind of like, I wouldn't lash out all the time, but on the inside, I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I would always that day, or as soon as I could, wash my, like, it drove me crazy.
So here's one of the differences between you and me, is that there's a handprint or a thumbprint, whatever, on my sunroof right now in my car that's been there since I got the car.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I see it every time, but it doesn't drive me insane.
Yeah.
And I haven't done anything about it, obviously.
Yeah, so. I wouldn't. That would have been, you've had the car for 8 months or whatever, 6 months. That would have been gone a long time ago. Now, to be fair, my windows are dirty right now. There are fingerprints, there are smudges. It doesn't bother me as much. Sure, I want windows cleaned, and I would love for them to be clear as day every day, but it's not as big of a deal. And I just think back to those years, and I'm like, why was that such a big deal? Another one,
Yeah.
Kyle, you probably know this. It still bothers me, but it's not as much of a big deal. I don't like it when people touch my hair. Like, don't touch my hair.
Yeah.
And especially the older we get, it's unlikely that anybody's gonna walk up and just rub your hair, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What's a situation in which somebody would be touching your hair?
Well, I think younger, little kid, but even like high school and college, I think people would do it out of spite. They kind of try to mess up your hair, or
Okay.
I don't know,
Yeah,
if you're
of
if you're
course.
sitting down, like I can picture being in class, and if I'm sitting down and a buddy walks by to go to his seat, and I'm sitting, he's standing, he's gonna rub my hair as he walks by, or my head, or
Yeah,
slap my
totally.
ear or whatever.
That's
So
a
it's
good
just stuff
point.
like that where I'm like, don't touch my hair. Now,
Yeah.
I think it's probably true for a lot of people. Like, I don't want anybody to touch my hair today, but I don't care as much. Like, I don't run to the bathroom right away to look in the mirror and try to adjust what little pieces came out of place. I just go with it. And surprisingly, I leave the house sometimes with, like today, nothing in my hair, no hat, just kind of whatever.
Wow.
Like I've gotten more
brave.
relaxed in what I think other people think about how I look.
We were talking a few episodes ago that the older you get, you just don't care about what other people think. Obviously, that's a big thing in high school or younger, is caring what other people think, but you just don't anymore. You're like, oh, whatever.
Drew Barrymore was who I referenced there when we were talking with Aaron. Drew Barrymore says something like, I'm entering my 50, she was turning 50, and it's the 50 F hits, right? You just don't care what people think. You kind of run at your own pace, or you beat your own drum. That's 100% what we're talking about, or what we're thinking now. Another one that came to mind, I thought it was the end of the world. I was probably 18, Kyle, but specifically, I was involved in an internship, and it was through my church, so it was like 24/7. It wasn't like 3 days a week, right? It was exploitative, committed, free labor, all for the sake of church. I remember we were getting ready for a trip out of the country. We were leaving in like 2 weeks or whatever, and my parents came to the town about an hour away. They were going to come see the services, be a part of our day, and then we were going out to lunch. Somewhere between services and lunch, our leader was like, oh, we're not going to have time for a break. We're way behind. We're going to have to stay here all day and keep training. And I remember like crying, and I was 18, because I'm like, my parents are in town. Like, I'm going to go to lunch with my parent. It was a big deal. And I look back now and I'm like, what? Why'd you cry? Like, it's one thing to be annoyed and frustrated. I just remember it being a very traumatic couple hours.
Right. I could totally see that.
It's so ridiculous.
One thing I think of, I literally said, this is the end of my life. I think not the end of the world, but like I used that phrase, right?
Yeah.
Is I broke my arm snowboarding when I was in 8th grade or something. This was before my FA diagnosis, and I was a pitcher. And I remember, like, I don't know, half an hour after it happened, on the way to the emergency room, saying to whoever was there, I think it was my mom, was a chaperone on the ski trip, so she was in the car, saying, this is the end of the world because I won't be able to pitch or play baseball, right? And on one hand, I can see how short-sighted and little kid talk that is.
Sure.
But on the other hand, especially right now, when I can't play baseball.
Yeah.
how valuable that time was and that season was to be able to play.
Sure. I wonder if everything was such a big deal when we were younger because we haven't experienced life and we don't know that there's so much more to life than just being a kid or playing baseball or whatever that one thing, messy hair. And obviously, the older we get, the more we realize there's so much more to life than a perfect haircut or whatever.
Right. And I think maybe when you're young, like, I didn't know a whole lot more than
Just
playing
that.
baseball
Sure.
and going snowboarding.
Yep.
I didn't know that there were 1,000 other things you could do, as we mentioned in a few episodes ago. Letting go of one option to discover 1,000 more, right?
Yeah.
I
for
didn't
sure.
know that there was 1,000 more back then.
I remember there was another specific incident in my life that I can totally visualize. It was later in life, Kyle, and you remember this season, but late 20s, I got married and that came to an end. My career came to an end, and there was just a lot of change in my late 20s. And somewhere in the midst of that, my dad also passed away. He was sick at this time, but he was still alive. And I remember because life was so difficult, I was barely making ends meet, right? It was '09, like the economy wasn't that great, and I was barely hanging on.
Yeah.
I had very little money to do anything extra with. I was renting a room in a house with a bunch of people, and we all locked our doors, so I had a key to my bedroom door. This particular day, I locked myself out of my room. And I needed to get into my room in order to get my work clothes so I can go to work. So what comes to mind for me is I'm prefacing it because there was a time in my life where I really cared about being reliable. And I still care about that, but it was a different context back then. And maybe I should say I cared about my job maybe too much because it was just waiting tables at a restaurant. But in that season of my life, I felt like that was all I could do or all I had to pay the bills. And I remember freaking out. I didn't want to break the door down. It was the weekend, so I had to call an emergency locksmith. They came out, they opened the door, I got in, I got my work shoes, my work clothes, and I called work and I said, hey, I'm probably going to be 20 to 30 minutes late. And I was. But I remember being so bummed about that because that emergency locksmith cost $250.
Wow.
And I had to put that, I didn't have that. I didn't know how I was going to do it. So, of course, used a credit card and just had so much regret for a couple days that happened. And of course, hindsight, I'm like, man, I could have just gone to Walmart and bought some shoes, because at the restaurant you gotta have certain shoes. I could have gone and got a cheap pair for like
for less
$40
than $250
and dealt with the door later. Or dealt with it during normal hours where maybe it was only $150 or whatever. Or I just could have called out sick and not worried about work that day. In the moment, you just panic. You're narrow-minded. And I remember that specific incident. And of course, today, when something is going wrong, even, what seems to be that major or maybe even that minor, you just take a deep breath and I try to think about things more broadly, like, is this one thing really gonna impact my career? Or is this one thing really gonna derail everything I'm working towards?
Yeah, and I think also you learned from that experience. Over time we learned from those things and never want to be in that situation ever again.
That's true. Let's talk disability specific. I know we had a couple earlier in the season, but especially as with our progressive condition, obviously, if you think back 10, 15, 20 years, there was a time where it was much more stable. You were able to sort of hide any kind of abnormality. I think about that for me 3, 4, 5 years ago. I wanted to seem normal, quote unquote, especially getting gas. And I don't know if it's because I had people approach me at the gas station and accuse me of being drunk and shouldn't be driving, or if I just wanted people to think I was, quote unquote, normal. So I remember I would get out of my car and I'd very carefully walk around to the gas pump because I wanted to appear normal. I don't know what exactly changed, but today, I don't care.
Yeah.
I get out of my car and I literally, from the moment my foot comes out of the vehicle, I look drunk. I hang on to the luggage rack and I walk around and I don't care what people think. I just do my thing. And every now and then I'll think to myself, man, if I see other people also pumping, I do wonder. I'm like, I wonder what they think right now. But I also am like, it's fine. Like,
I don't
I'm
really care.
gonna get in my car in a minute. I'm gonna drive away. I'll see if anybody, tries to stop me or approach me.
I forget. Has anyone ever approached you? You've told a
at least
story
twice.
about that, right?
Yeah, I can picture at least 2 different ones at a gas station. And then a couple years ago, there was that guy that pulled up behind me in a Starbucks parking lot. I assume we talked about it. But that was before I was using the walker all the time. I had it in the car always, but I would, for the post office, Starbucks, anything kind of quick and short, I would just walk. And of course, it was wobbly. At Starbucks, I walked out with my cup, probably a little disjointed, and got in my car. And as soon as I got in my car, I saw my rearview mirror. Another car pulled up behind me and parked and got out of the car. Essentially,
that's right.
Blocking me into my parking spot. We had an exchange. Thankfully, very cool, calm, and collective, and I was able to point to the walker that was in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And he was profusely apologetic. But yeah, I've had a few of those incidents.
Yeah. I went to get gas in Sacramento. There's a gas station by Alhambra Avenue. Anyway, no one's gonna relate to
only
that.
one gas station?
For some reason, I had to go in to pay. And they wouldn't sell it to me. Like, I had to prepay or something, and they wouldn't turn the pump on.
Because they thought...
And they wouldn't let me get gas, because they thought I was drunk. And I tried to explain, I got this disease, and no. And then I was so worked up. Oh my gosh, I've never been more worked up. I went home, I grabbed some information about Friedreich's ataxia. It might have been like, I don't know, a pamphlet or the Fair newsletter or something. And I brought it back to the gas station. And nobody cared. Like, I thought, I'm going to solve something.
I'm going to prove a point. I've done the same kind of thing. Episode 263, we talked about language, right? And we had a whole discussion on, do you want help or do you need help? And I was thinking about this episode and elements of the conversation, and there's really only been one time that I recall where I got really hung up on somebody's word choices. And it got into a back and forth without really an argument, but I wasn't letting the guy off the hook. It was probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
We're at a hotel, checking in. This was one of those races we did overnight when I was part of the running team, or at least helping organize the running team. This particular year, I wasn't running, but I insisted on being in the car and staying awake as long as possible and cheering the team on, being at every checkpoint and getting dinner and just having everything ready throughout the night for the team. Well, at some point, I got sick. I hit a wall. I was actually fighting COVID. I was like, I need to lay down. So we got rooms, and as I was checking in, I had asked the guy, I'm like, go in my room or one room's accessible, right? And he typed in, he was like, oh yeah, we've got you in the handicap room. I'm like, oh, okay, so like an accessible room? Yeah, a handicap room. And it just bothered me so much. I'm like, you little, I wasn't having it. So I'm like, okay, cool, but I really want an accessible room. Like he wasn't getting it. He was like, yeah, this one is handicapped. And my body was there, and I didn't push too much. I said it like 3 or 4 times like that, and it was obvious he wasn't getting a clue. And ultimately, I had to realize it doesn't matter. Just go to bed, Sean. But that exchange in Tahoe at Harrah's really bothered me.
Totally. It's easy sometimes when emotions are high to like focus on that because there's so much stuff that is out of your control. You're like, if I can just get
one
this
little
one
thing. Yeah. We laughed about my hair, but another thing that bothered me when I was younger, Kyle, I don't know if you ever dealt with it or not, but I had a really bad acne. Like it was really bad. So of course I'm self-conscious. I'm 16, 17, 18, and just my face, I can't shave. Like it was so bad. I didn't take a razor to my skin. Now today, thankfully, it's cleared up quite a bit. I still deal with 1 or 2 here and there, but man, today there could be like a zit on the tip of my nose, and sure, I don't love it, but I also like, it's like, okay, it's just part of life. But acting was although silly, it was a really big deal to me when I think of body image.
Did you ever take Accutane?
I did. That was really what finally got me out of that stage of life.
Because I did too, and I could remember like my lips would crack.
Yeah.
If I didn't always have chapstick. And then years later, you see all these commercials on TV where there's like some class action suit of people who used to be on Accutane because it did something bad. I don't know.
I don't remember.
But anyway, I was like, oh, whoops.
To this day, I stand with Accutane. Like it changed my life. At least my perspective and my self-confidence. Well, Kyle, there's stuff like this that we could probably talk about for hours. Obviously, I don't want to do that, and listeners probably don't want to listen. But to me, it's kind of therapeutic to look back and think about those things that were such a big deal. And now, life is good, despite whatever you thought you had to have or you thought you had to accomplish by a certain age or whatever that thought process might be. So as we wrap up, Kyle, I do have one question for you that we can navigate for a minute. Do you think younger Kyle would be proud of current Kyle?
That's a really good question, but I think the answer is yes. And if he wasn't, I'd probably kick his ass. I don't think I've changed all that much. I'm still a child.
Yep, that we know.
My high school math teacher said, people don't change. Yeah, that's all he said, I guess. Did I remember?
Class dismissed.
No, the circumstances around me have changed. My perspective has changed. My thoughts about things have changed. But I think the core of me is still there. And I think that little Kyle would recognize that and be assured that he will stick to the core of who he is until he's 43. And probably beyond.
Hopefully.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that was a... What about you?
I mean,
I'm gonna hear
obviously,
your answer.
you haven't thought about it, so it was a really crappy answer, but sure. Similar to you, I believe Little Sean would be proud of Big Sean, but I also think Little Sean would be surprised at a few things. Maybe not all of it. I feel like there are some things in life I thought I would either do or accomplish, or different things I would be a part of, that at 43 is not a part of life. And that's okay. It's not like a bad thing, but I feel like 16, 20, 25-year-old Sean had a different set of expectations. That version of Sean might be a little surprised those expectations never came to pass, or at least haven't yet. But I don't think little Sean would be so distraught and be like, oh my God, life is all wrong. I think there'd be a little bit of surprise.
I like the answer because I answered in the context of knowing everything that happened from when I was 10 till now. What happened in my life and where I'm at right now is very much different than what 10-year-old Kyle had in his mind.
Sure.
So he would likely be surprised and maybe a little disappointed. You're right.
Yeah.
Because it's different. But if he had the context of everything that's led up to this point, I think he'd be proud.
And if he wasn't, you could kick his ass. Like I said.
Exactly. Or have someone do it, because I probably couldn't throw a very good puncher.
Well, Kyle, again, another sort of meandering episode, but one that I think is important for all of us to entertain at some point in life. Think about the different stages of life and where you're at, and maybe laugh at the small things and the silly things, and take stock of the important things and readjust if you want to. Just because we're where we're at 43 doesn't mean we need to be here at 53 or at 45 even. So if there are big things like that that people want to adjust, hopefully taking an opportunity to think about where they're at in life and how they could adjust is something this conversation encourages others to do. Like always, we wrap up every episode with a note of gratitude. Both Kyle and I believe in the power of gratitude and how it helps us stay grounded. So, Kyle, who's your thank you note going to today?
At the beginning of this season, we talked about goals for the year, and one of my goals was to get my act together with regard to figuring out a workout routine besides cycling.
Sure.
That is going to be sustainable for me. So I reached out to my CrossFit gym. It just so happens that the manager of that gym was a coach at my old gym. So she knows me. She knew me back then, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But she understands my situation and some of the background. And so she's going to be a really great coach to help me figure out how to get back into it. So thank you to Coach Michelle. I'm going to go in tomorrow and figure out how to start again at CrossFit and see if that works out.
Nice. I'm saying thank you to Taylor, a coworker of mine who just recently transferred to a different area, so I don't get to see her all the time. But before she did that, she read and talked a lot about a book. The book is by Will Guidara, and it's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And of course, it makes sense in our world of guest service and the customer experience, if you will. Well, the book is all based on a guy's experience in the restaurant world. So part of me is like, okay, it'll make sense. There'll be some correlation. I took my time reading the book or getting to it. I was kind of like, whatever. It's another leadership kind of book, right? Well, dude, I started listening to the audio version, and it has become one of my favorite books, at least right now, because it's not a book about succeeding in the restaurant world or even succeeding at customer service. It's a book about everything in the world of serving the public, developing people on the employee side, developing business systems that are sustainable and good for everybody involved. It's how to manage a team. It's being cost effective. It's so much more than just being a successful restaurant. And I have found a lot of really good nuggets out of it that have really been impactful in my day-to-day philosophy or outlook on life. So I'm really grateful that Taylor is somebody I get to work with, but also somebody that recommended this book. And I'm really grateful Will Guidara wrote the book he did in the style that he chose to write it. So if you're a reader, check it out. It's a must read, in my opinion. Unreasonable Hospitality.
That sounds like a good one. Thank you for joining us for season 13. We've had a great time this season and lots of really great guests. This is the last episode of the season, so please connect with us on social media during the off season. For this episode, please share it with a friend if you like what you hear. Subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast apps. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.